out correctly, I think, that infidelity tops the list of morally unacceptable issues because it involves lying, breaking a commitment. Question for you, though. Do you think the fact that 92% of Americans think infidelity is immoral, but only 91% of Americans think polygamy is immoral, means that it's 1% more moral to stay married to your wife and marry the person you're having an affair with?
Yes.
California-born and Michigan-raised, Andrew Federley Wilkes Creer, popularly known as Andrew W.K, cuts an imposing figure, standing over 6 feet tall, long hair, and known for wearing a sometimes dirty all-white outfit. Yet when he's on stage, he comes off as somewhere between a performance artist, a comedian, a preacher, as well as maybe a politician. He's easy and engaging to listen to, and he's got a natural charm as well. Plus, the guy loves partying and pizza, so what's not there to like? But in today's video, let's talk about one of the strangest mysteries that you probably never knew existed: the fake persona of Andrew W.K, the son of a violinist mother and law professor father who actually authored a popular casebook. Andrew got his first start in music taking piano lessons at the age of 4. He was dubbed Andrew W.K from an elementary school teacher who had to differentiate him from his classmates, several of which of course were named Andrew or Drew, who frequently found themselves in detention. His first record he remembered as a kid was hearing the supergroup USA for Africa performing We Are the World. He was 6 at the time, recalling to longlivevinyl.net how the footage of all these different popular artists and celebrities singing on TV moved him, going on to add that it was the first music he remembered hearing and seeking out.
We are the world. We are the children.
Another record that was equally influential in his upbringing was from his dad's record collection, the K-Tel instrumental album Hooked on Classics, that was recorded by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. As he started getting into junior high and high school, he found himself more into groups like Napalm Death, Obituary, Mr. Bungle, and the group Couch. It was during this period in his life he played keys and drums in a variety of punk, metal, and noise rock outfits who had names like Lab Lobotomy, Music Band, Mr. Velocity Hopkins, as well as Cathode and Ancient Art of Bear. This early work was a pretty far cry from the party rock anthems he'd later become known for. He claimed to Spin magazine that it was also during this period in his life he killed time by being involved in what he referred to as small-time fraud schemes, remarking, "I really wanted to hurt people's feelings, make them feel horrible, and stealing a car was too direct." In a separate interview with the Daily Telegraph, he remarked how he was extremely hateful and angry and was prone to periods of committing vandalism. It was later on in Andrew W.K's career he became a pretty big advocate for mental health, talking about his struggles with both anxiety and depression, remarking to media, "My story is a familiar one. From a young age I felt consistently uneasy in the world and thus began an ongoing search for something to quell the sense of wrongness inside of me." He recalled in one of his early interviews that he found salvation in a few key life principles thanks to author Robert J. Ringer's book Winning Through Intimidation. He became a person who was now present and living in the moment, and he wasn't intimidated by life, noting that basically anything was possible. At the age of 18 in 1998, Andrew moved to New York City, but music wasn't his first career choice, as he wanted to work in the world of fashion, either as a designer or a model. There's even some pretty hilarious headshots of him floating around the internet, and he also remarked wanting to work as a designer. When he was 15, Andrew wrote a letter to one of the designers for the Japanese experimental fashion label Comme des Garçons. It turned out one of the designers from the company actually wrote him back telling him that when he turned 18, he could come work for the label. Upon moving to New York, he took up a job at the company, but he was fired after only 2 months. It was a devastating blow for him, and without a job, he soon supported himself working as, I'm not kidding you guys, a gumball machine salesman, and he also tinkered away on his music, telling Louder Sound. "I had never been drunk, I didn't do any drugs, and I didn't have any friends. I spent a huge amount of time at home alone, which was pretty much what I did all my life. I had always felt awkward at parties. Social interaction was tricky for me, but I loved the atmosphere of being at a party, the way it felt in the air. So creating music that was encouraging partying was a no-brainer." He didn't have a band at this point in his career, so he'd say yes to any gig he could get, and he'd show up to places performing as a one-man band with a CD containing backing tracks. He played the keyboard. He sang and headbanged as well as playing air guitar. He told the Daily Telegraph he played a coffee shop. One article claimed it was a Starbucks he played at, as well as a trendy gallery in Manhattan. It was after a short stint, he recorded some demos in his Brooklyn apartment, and he soon headed south to Florida, where he recruited a group of like-minded musicians to form a live band with, including drummer Donald D.T. Tardy of the metal band Obituary. He recorded his first EP called Girls Own Juice on the Michigan avant-garde label Bulb Records. This was his first release under the Andrew W.K. moniker, with one collaborator of his calling it Judas Priest meets Sparks. Girls Own Juice received a 5-star rating from Kerrang, and buzz was slowly building over this new musician. Soon enough, Dave Grohl of Foo Fighters offered Andrew W.K. a chance to open for his band in San Francisco, which he accepted. By the end of the year 2000, Andrew W.K. released his follow-up EP called Party Till You Puke, and it was his last release on Bulb Records. He soon nabbed a recording contract with Island Records, believe it or not, taking the first offer they gave him against the advice of his manager.
We are prepared to make you a very generous offer.
And we are prepared to reject that offer.
Michael, you haven't even heard.
Never accept their first offer. What is your second offer?
$12,000.
Are you kidding me? That is insultingly low. I don't even want to hear what your first offer was.
Def Jam's marketing plan was to release his major label debut titled I Get Wet in the UK first, build some buzz overseas, and then release it stateside the following year. Around the time of his debut album coming out in the UK, there was so much hype around it. New Musical Express hailed him as the next savior of rock, and to many people, he elicited either a love it or loathe it kind of reaction. During press for I Get Wet, Andrew acted also quite mysterious, not even answering basic questions about what the WK meant in his name, kind of building this mystique around him. The Daily Telegraph claimed it stood for White Killer or Wild Kid. Andrew remarked in one interview it stood for Who Knows. Then there was this bizarre interview he gave on a New Zealand music show called Space in 2002.
Hello.
Hi there.
What are you doing under the piano?
Sequestered.
Hey, forgive me and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew.
Huh?
Andrew W.K. What's the W.K. stand for, by the way?
Who knows?
Who knows? Ha! I love that. Not yeah. You know, that's the thing. See, he's ripping things, and that's a good thing. But really, maybe you're just a
Basic fruit,
circus fruit guy.
yogurt, berry yogurt, most of those things. All I want to try to do is have as much fun as I can while I'm still here. And
apart from some of his crazy odd interviews he gave, other interviewers made mention of his polite manners and his love for his mother. As for the album title, he remarked in the I Get Wet press kit, "Whatever you do in life, if you go full bore, you're bound to get wet with blood, sweat, and urine." One of the most memorable parts of his major label debut was the iconic cover taken by hip New York photographer Roe Etheridge. The blood effect was created by Andrew, who hit himself repeatedly in the face with a cinder block, but he wasn't happy with the amount of blood that came out. So in addition to showing his blood, they also added pig's blood from a nearby butcher shop. The cover caused some controversy in the UK, with some claiming it advocated for drug use. Some record stores even opted to censor the cover with a black sticker over the bleeding nose. The first single, and arguably one of his best-known songs, Party Hard, charted in the UK, peaking at number 19 in the fall of 2001 before falling off a few weeks later. The second single, She Is Beautiful, peaked at number 55. These songs, along with other cuts, including It's Time to Party and Party Till You Puke, cemented his reputation as the king of partying. But he was quick to point out in interviews that partying wasn't limited to drugs or alcohol, telling the interviewer, "A party is a place where you can feel good about what you're doing. You don't have to drink or do drugs, or you can drink and do drugs. No one can be left out. The idea is come on in and let's have some fun." The Daily Telegraph called I Get Wet a mashup of bubblegum pop, death metal, and dance rhythms. Going into 2002, New Musical Express was dubbing him Bigger Than Jesus, Meet the Savior of Music. While Face magazine called him the biggest star of 2002, even Rolling Stone named him as the 10 people to watch. Andrew W.K. soon became known for his incredibly energetic live shows. His unique blend of positivity, partying, and rock music struck a chord with audiences, especially during a time when the music scene seemed to be dominated by more serious or angsty acts. By the way, while we're on the topic of I Get Wet, anybody remember Madden 2003 where Party Hard was on the soundtrack? Or the legendary movie Old School that actually featured It's Time to Party in some of the TV ads.
You're officially starting a fraternity.
That's genius.
But one man's home
This is my house.
is another man's party.
Half these guys don't even go to this. I want in.
Luke Wilson, Will Ferrell, and Vince Vaughn.
If you tell anyone about this, I'll kill you. I'm kidding. We'll come back by tonight.
Old School, rated R, February 21st.
I want to point out that I Get Wet came out a month after 9/11 in the UK. And at this time, the US was mourning, and the US and the UK were about to go to war in Afghanistan. Andrew remarked the latter sound. There was a big debate because they thought putting that song out would be suicide and I would never recover. In the early days, there was a lot of debate over how safe we should play it. I would get coached over what I should say in interviews. They'd say, don't talk too much about having fun or enjoying your life because there's a lot of people out there who are miserable. But as Andrew saw it, being grateful for what you have and enjoying life was more important than ever. Yet, despite his success and charisma and likability, he was no stranger to criticism and even conspiracy theories. From the moment he stepped foot in the UK in the fall of 2001 and played his first show at the Garage in London, several publications started questioning his authenticity and whether he was a fabrication or creation of the music industry. The Guardian newspaper reported in their review of his first ever UK show, one music biz conspiracy theory currently circulating suggests that Andrew W.K. is an elaborate hoax devised by former Nirvana drummer Dave Grohl. You have to back up for a second and take a look at what was happening in the bigger scheme of things. Around this time, there were some other high-profile rumors and theories circulating in the rock music world. New Musical Express had a cover story looking into the whole sibling rumor of Jack and Meg White of the White Stripes, and then they looked into Randy Fitzsimmons, who was the so-called sixth member of the Hives. Some people believe that Andrew W.K.'s image was so carefully constructed that it might actually have been faked. Not only that, but there's speculation that Andrew W.K. may have actually been played by several different people. If you look at things a bit closer, you'll see that a person named Steev Mike is credited as a producer on I Get Wet. But what if Steev Mike was actually just one person or a group of people? Rumors have run wild online that Steev Mike is actually Andrew W.K.'s father or possibly a group of industry bigwigs, maybe producer Rick Rubin and even Dave Grohl himself. The basic conspiracy theory goes that Andrew W.K. was replaced by an actor in 2003 after the release of his second major studio album, The Wolf. They point to his change in his singing style on his second album, going for more melody than his previous release. According to Tone Deaf Online, one theory is that a group of people who made up Steev Mike started to have creative differences about how to present Andrew W.K. to the public. Then in November 2004, things took a turn for the bizarre. Someone claiming to be Steev Mike hacked Andrew W.K.'s website, alleging that Andrew was a fraud and posting messages like this one that read, "I never wanted it to come to this, but I can no longer wait in the shadows. I never wanted it to come to this, but I can no longer wait in the background and ignore your complete disrespect. Our choice to let you enjoy the spotlight while I create the magic. You will not force me to expose myself until I expose you first." Andrew W.K. responded to the message stating, "Please don't believe Steev Mike. I used to refer to myself as Steev Mike. I used to call myself Steev Mike a long time ago, and it's nothing now. Someone is trying to confuse you and make me look bad." Someone on the Andrew W.K. subreddit dug up an old interview he gave to Dazed and Confused around 2000 or 2001 before I Get Wet came out, where he is continually referred to as Steev Mike, with the article stating Steev Mike, who was until recently known as Andrew W.K. They even had a phone number listed called the Steev Mike Hotline. Even in the book Andrew W.K.'s I Get Wet in the 33rd and 1/3 series, a number of label execs who worked with Andrew W.K. indicate that Steev Mike was a moniker that Andrew wanted to adopt and one of his old bandmates in his high school band echoed that it was probably an elaborate joke by the musician. But when the New Musical Express confronted Andrew W.K. by using the moniker Steev Mike, he responded saying, "No, I was never Steev Mike. Steev Mike is his own guy. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Steev Mike." Then on the 17th of December 2004, Andrew W.K. performed a gig in Elizabeth, New Jersey. When he arrived at the gig, he was supposedly low energy, quiet, and when he got on stage, both the security guards and the fans claimed that the person performing wasn't Andrew, but rather an impostor. His set that night was cut short, and people in the audience called into the local radio stations, confused about what they had just witnessed. In addition to that, they also called the club promoter, and the promoter recalled his version of events, remarking how the show was going past its curfew and hence Andrew had to cut his set short. And back in those days, Andrew W.K. had a website with a forum called AWK World. Andrew answered fan questions, and leading up to the show in New Jersey, his answers became more infrequent and they just started to get a bit odd and weird. And his personas seemed to be changing as well, with numeric codes being used to answer some of the questions. Then 2 days after the New Jersey show, a girl named Christine Williams, the supposed webmaster of his website, started responding to the fans instead of Andrew. The most extreme versions of the theory claim that Andrew W.K. is a brainwashed agent of the Illuminati or the Church of Scientology. It's also interesting to note that Andrew W.K. ran into legal trouble in 2004. Although he really hasn't said much about the case, what he has shared is that somebody he was involved with, who he was close to, prevented him from using the name Andrew W.K. in certain parts of the United States. This led to him releasing his 2009 album 55 Cadillac under a UK label to avoid further litigation. In a 2009 article he wrote for The Guardian Online, he explained, "An old friend of mine got in some business trouble and basically decided to take it out on me." To cut a long story short, this person is someone I worked very closely with and had a formal and family business relationship with. He added that there was confusion over who owned the rights to his own image. As for his former bandmates, his old drummer Donald Tardy commented on the whole theory and doesn't completely rule out the possibility that he could have been a character played by multiple people. I understand why rumors start, because it went from nothing to absolutely playing in every corner of the globe. But Andrew had the mind, ability, and focus to make it happen, and that's exactly why it happened so quickly. Tardy went on to reveal that he'd also heard of a person named Mike, who Andrew would talk to on conference calls. He knew the two were close, but he never actually met this Mike character in person. Andrew W.K. has tried to address the rumors himself in the subsequent years, but arguably he's just confused more people.
I'm actually not Andrew W.K. It was created, and this is a bit of a confession, it was created by a large group of people, and we talked about how we could come up with something that would move people. And it was done in the spirit of commerce. And I was auditioned alongside of many other people to fill this role of a great front man, a great performer.
This is another situation where there's a misunderstanding here. It's not uncommon in the music business, in entertainment in general, to work with managers, to work with creative directors, to work with image consultants, to work with stylists. So just because I worked with a group of people from the beginning doesn't mean that I'm a fake or that I'm not a real person or that I'm not able to, be smart. I don't know how, you have to understand how it's strange for someone to accuse you of not being real.
But maybe the whole thing was all a ruse intentionally designed to get him more publicity. Apart from music, he's taken on other projects like opening his club in Soho, publishing a book called The Party Bible, working with other artists, and penning an advice column for a Japanese magazine where he's quite popular. He's also hosted an advice show on MTV2 called Your Friend Andrew W.K. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again in Rock Country Stories. Take care.